Plain Truth, a show where we go into some of the mysteries, anomalies, and the dirty underbelly of the world around us. I'm your host, Paul, and joining us this week, we have Courtney Brown, who's quite well known in the remote viewing world. Courtney, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I want to thank you guys so much for inviting me on.
Well, we're glad to have you. And along for the ride is my friend Melody. Melody, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good to be here.
Okay, good. Well, Courtney, you're back, and you got another project out, which is most interesting. Would you care to tell everyone about it?
Well, just I guess that most everybody on your show is familiar with what I do.
They're gonna know about you, Courtney. We all know.
Yeah. Well, but as the director of the Farsight Institute, I've had to deal with some remote viewers that are the best in the planet, but prima donnas, and they have a real concern about wanting the remote viewing itself. It's a relatively new phenomenon studied really fundamentally at the Farsight Institute, but it's not really studied. There's no place where it's studied at university levels or taught anything like that. So they really are yearning for some type of mainstream acceptability. So they've always not wanted to include targets or projects dealing with extraterrestrial issues, such as we're dealing with today, which is an anomaly on the surface of Iapetus, a moon of Saturn. And so for years, I've just told them I won't give them any explicitly extraterrestrial targets. Now, whenever I talk about a future project, I'm always lying. I have to, because you cannot talk about a future target and actually do the target, because everything has to be done totally blind. So if I ever say I might do a project, then that project I can never do, because then the remote viewers would think about it. And then if they started perceiving a little bit of that target in the beginning, they'd come to the conclusion, oh, this must be that target this time. And then you get junk for data. So you have to have no leaks, and the remote viewers have to be totally convinced that they have no idea what it is for it to work. And so for years I told them, oh, don't worry, I'll never give them an extraterrestrial target. But what I was really doing is waiting for a time that it was appropriate. Now, fearing that they might quit on me if I gave them extraterrestrial targets more than once, I packed 3 into one project. And the first, and they were more flabbergasted than anybody when they saw the results. But the first one was the so-called face on Mars, Cydonia Mars, and that came out 2 months ago. And then the second one was this anomaly that looks clearly in a NASA-supplied picture from the Cassini space probe like a set of structures, very clear structures, on a wall of a crater on the moon Iapetus of Saturn. And then the third is the Phoenix Lights event of 1997, and that will come out in mid-July, about a month from now. So the Iapetus, Phoenix Lights, and Cydonia, I packed into one, knowing that I probably wouldn't be able to get a second shot at extraterrestrial targets with these viewers. So I, am really very happy that the 3 that we got were worth their weight in gold. So what we have is a project now that's just hot off the presses, just finished release, where all the remote viewing was done live on video and standing up in a theatrically interesting manner by the best remote viewers on the planet Earth. And we got it caught on video. And so for those people who wanted us to do over many years some extraterrestrial targets, this is it. You get your sort of plate full on this one. And the results couldn't be more interesting. We found out what this anomaly is. Now, the picture is available on our website, the NASA picture taken by the Cassini space probe, and that's www.farsight.org, Farsight.org, O-R-G, because we're a nonprofit. And that picture, there's a huge banner at the top of the website saying aliens on Iapetus. Just click on that, and then you'll get to see the picture and the whole thing. And that picture I saw on the internet many years ago, and there was some internet chatter about it because it looked like some structures, and also not only some structures with curved walls and a circular top, a couple circular tops, or parallel structures, but also what looked like windows or large, huge windows on the sides of it, and then what looked like a staircase with a right angle, a very clear staircase with a right angle off to the side. Now, I don't think that is a staircase because it's too big for a staircase, but it's clearly artificial in the sense that it looks like a staircase. I mean, you can't get something like that with a meteor crash on a moon. A meteor crash doesn't look like a staircase. So whatever the thing was, it seemed to me to be artificial. And what we need to do when we do projects at the Farsight Institute, we need to have something that's verifiable, that's really unambiguously verifiable in order to do a project. So if we're interested in whether something's an extraterrestrial, whatever, we can't remote view something that we don't have some type of physical evidence for. For example, it's very hard for us to do the Roswell incident. I do think the Roswell incident happened, but we ourselves don't have any pictures of it. We ourselves don't have, hundreds of thousands of witnesses. The witnesses that were there are, many are dead. Apparently some were, rather strongly hushed up. So, we don't really have anything verifiable to deal with. So even though the Roswell incident may be big on people's minds, our remote viewing won't shed any real light on it because we don't have a way to prove that the remote viewers were on target. We're describing the correct thing because we don't have anything to compare it with. But this Iapetus thing and the so-called face on Mars, those were perfect because they had public domain NASA supplied pictures of the thing, and we could say, do the remote viewers describe exactly that? And they did in spades. It was really great. And then with the third one, which will come out in a month, mid-July, that was on the Phoenix Lights. Now, there are zillions of videos of the Phoenix Lights on YouTube. We actually can't use any of those on our project because we don't have any way to verify any particular one. We assume that the 99% of them are as they say they are, but we could do a whole project on some individual's pictures, and then after the project's done, the person could come out and say, "Oh, I just did that in Photoshop," and so we can't use anybody's pictures. We have to use like pictures that are supplied by the government, like NASA, things like that. Those things can't be retracted. But with the Phoenix Lights, we had literally hundreds of thousands of witnesses, including the governor of the state, who are on record for describing these things. So that was enough. That's a huge level of verifiability. And then if you consider all the YouTube videos of the lights that are available, even though we don't focus on any one of those videos, the combination of all of them produces a bulk of information that indeed something happened. So this Iapetus picture is not something that is on the front headlines like the Phoenix Lights or Cydonia Mars, and I picked it because of that. Meaning I wanted a target that was unambiguous, with a picture taken by NASA that clearly looks anomalous and that wasn't on the front burners, that everyone wasn't talking about it, but it was really unambiguous from a photographic point of view. And then I wanted our remote viewers to go in, and these remote viewers, Dick Algeier and Daz Smith, are literally the best remote viewers on the planet using military or military-derived methodologies. And I knew they had something to go on because they had to describe in perfect detail what was physically there that we can see in the photo, meaning it's a crater caused by a meteor on a barren moon with no vegetation around, with rocks all over the place. So they had to describe that exactly, and they did it. They did it perfectly. The remote viewing done, for example, by Dick Algeier, it was, I think, one of the best in terms of the verifiable components of the project that you can actually see in the picture. It was one of the best remote viewing sessions I've ever seen anyone do at any time. where he clearly said, my gosh, this is a meteor crater. There are meteor debris all over the place. It's a barren terrain. As far as you can see, just land, land, land. I don't know why I'm actually asked to come here. There's nothing happening. Then he said, except for this one spot in the corner of the against the wall of the crater, there's something artificial over here. That must be why I'm being sent here. And he went over and he started to investigate it. And he described it and drew it perfectly. And Des Smith did a very similar, spectacular job. So that's why we have to have something verifiable. Because once you see these quality remote viewers describe what's clearly in the picture with such a high level of detail, with a level of accuracy that is absolutely no worse than what would have happened if they were physically there with a spacesuit and saw everything with their own eyes. So that's amazing. It's actually better than that, because not only do they get that level of accuracy, but and completeness in the picture, but they can move through the walls, they can move back and forth in time. So it's actually better than what they could get with their own physical eyes. So you actually see that the remote viewing is spot on. And then it's a jaw-dropping moment. This is a really interesting project to watch. It's available now both as a DVD and a video on demand, and it's unbelievable to actually watch it, because there's a tension. You clearly see, you yourself know what the project's all about because you are watching it as the audience, but it's clear that they don't, and they're piecing it all together. And as they piece it together really quickly and start describing it with that level of accuracy, absolutely everyone I've ever spoken to, the reaction's the same. The jaw drops. Oh, it's one of those OMG moments. And then they go into the new stuff, which is what the anomaly actually is, who was there, who built it, and why it's there and how it was used.
Yeah, okay. Well, Courtney, why don't you give us a little bit of the background on Iapetus, right?
Well,
what stands out about it? And
yeah, Iapetus is an interesting, strange moon. It's a moon of Saturn. It's icy. It's got a couple things that are really weird. First of all, it's got this large ridge around the center, the equator of it. It looks almost like a belt around the center of it. And it has a large splotch on one side of the moon. And we did a project on that previously, and that splotch actually came from a planet that exploded where the asteroid belt is today. So the asteroid belt is a result of a planet that exploded. We did a specific project on the origins of the asteroid belt to compare two theories. The first is the mainstream idea of the asteroid belt coming from the primordial solar nebula, which is junk that is left over from the beginning of the solar system. That's the mainstream. That's what's taught in all the universities, although there's not a shred of evidence to support that. For example, the Large Asteroids series and others, the asteroids are huge, big rocks. Well, you can't get a rock out of the primordial solar nebula. The primordial solar nebula is dust. And so what happens with dust is it has to be drawn together by a gravity well, which is a planet, that then puts it under pressure because of gravity to form large, heavy, concentrated rocks. And so in order to get a big rock, you need a gravity source. You need a planet. So you can't get a rock without a planet. And so the alternate hypothesis for the origin of the asteroid belt was actually raised, a very long time ago, but it was prominently promoted by Thomas Van Flandern, who was he's dead now, but he was a very mainstream, extremely well published astronomer who was head of his department of celestial mechanics at the Naval Observatory, and he amassed a huge amount of planetary data indicating that the asteroid belt was in fact the result of a planet that exploded for whatever reason. And so we did a test of that, and it turns out that all of the evidence with remote viewing, using a large collection of military-grade remote viewers from multiple methodologies, they all came in with the same stuff. It all had the origin of a huge explosion of a planet. So what happened was there was this explosion was so incredible that the planet, when it exploded, sent a debris wave throughout the entire solar system. And Iapetus is an interesting moon because it's white, it's icy, and it's also tidally locked in its orbit in its orbit around Saturn. So it doesn't spin. It's like our moon. It's tidally locked. It doesn't spin. So it basically was able to stay still while the debris wave passed, which is why that splotch is on there. Now, the other thing about the asteroid belt, is the asteroids also have overwhelming evidence of being exposed to extreme heat source. They have glazing, volcanism on the surface, and that's the other indication that they were caused by an exploding planet. There's a lot of other evidence indicating that clearly, but that's something people can read about with Thomas Van Flanders' books on the subject. But nonetheless, the origin of Iapetus is very interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
So do crazy wild-eyed people think it was put together, like it was put there by powerful aliens or something?
Yeah, actually, some people think it's of it like the Death Star in Star Wars, because it has a large crater on it that sort of looks like the dish on Star Wars, the Death Star, and the ridge looks like something on Star Wars. But it is, in fact, a moon that's a regular natural substance moon, but it does, in fact, have alien activity on it. So that's actually, the people that have sort of ideas about it, that's okay. That's sort of them speculating and then wondering about some of the anomalous elements of Iapetus. But we indeed found out that at least one anomalous element on Iapetus is real. That set of structures on the wall of a crater.
And I watched the video, of course, and it was really, like you said, quite something to watch as they gradually come to realize what it is they're dealing with, and the unbelievable scenery, so to speak.
Yeah.
Dick Algier said it was basically perhaps the prettiest place in the solar system.
Yeah, it was unbelievably beautiful. The whole idea, you have to understand, you've got an icy moon with very stark barren terrain, meteor debris all over the place, craters. And right above is a completely unfettered star field, no atmosphere to disturb the stars. And then right above you also have Saturn and the rings of Saturn. It has got to be one of the most beautiful physical locations to be at in the entire solar system. Just being there on the edge of the crater looking up must be a moment to remember. And that's, in fact, why the facility was built there. So it is an unbelievably beautiful place to be. So a lot of the other moons of Saturn are on the same plane as the rings of Saturn. So you don't get to see the rings so clearly. But Iapetus is off the plane. And so when you look up, you can see everything, the rings, Saturn, the stars. I mean, it's just, and Dick Algier, when he was describing it, clearly described it as, this is one of the most beautiful places that in all of existence.
You said that the facility was built. Did they get information on what it was and what it was for?
The whole story. The facility, first of all, they described the surface of the physical geometry of the facility perfectly. It is very clearly visible in the picture supplied by NASA, which I encourage all of your listeners to go see for themselves on our website, farsight.org. And when they went in, well, let me just explain it this way. When you think of an alien facility on outer space, on a moon or something, the normal conclusions and thoughts are a military base, a spy operation, a mining facility, a commercial industrial facility, something like that. This was none of that. Nothing like that. This facility was built by a rich guy, somebody who was way richer than Warren Buffett, way richer than Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Airlines, way richer than Bill Gates. And he obviously had the type of flying technology that you see with the UFOs. So they obviously had the way to get there. They obviously had a way to get there very quickly. And so he built essentially a palace on that spot, the most beautiful spot in the solar system, that ended up being like a hotel resort, a retreat, a health spa. Think of it as a Zen monastery retreat on steroids. And the people who went there were not the peasants who groveled. These people were the elite of the elite. These people were the wealthiest of the wealthy. And these people, the person who built it had unlimited wealth. These people wanted a singular experience that could not be matched anywhere else, and where they could commune, have health treatments and things like that. That large staircase most likely was a waterfall. The whole thing was enclosed at one point, and because of air and stuff. And they also had a large overhang structure that Dick Algar described so nicely. It actually looks like the Phoenix. It looked like the St. Louis Arch tipped on its side. And that's very interesting because that exactly parallels the geometry of the rings of Saturn, which they would have seen right above. So some parts of the structure resembled the rings, and basically what happened is they went there, and they had regular like hotel staff that was there as well, but they went there to have a spiritual health retreat type of experience that was unparalleled anywhere else. And then it all came to an end. And what basically happened, it wasn't bombarded. Oh, actually, Des Smith has a tremendous amount of other information that he described to that. For example, they had an energy beam type source that came down from above, far above, to the facility. I don't know what that was, but he's described it. It sort of seemed like a microwave transmission that might have been a power source. That's a technology that we know even today, which is you can transmit power through microwave beams. And in fact, some people had originally thought about creating large solar arrays in space and then beaming the power back down using microwave to receivers down at the ground to sort of power like electric facilities. That was a hard sell because the concern was that birds might get in the middle of it. It might disrupt it. It might be harmful to wildlife. But in Iapetus, that would not be an issue. But anyway, the whole thing came to an end because there was a war in the solar system someplace. And we have other evidence. A lot of remote viewing that we've done all seems to be pointed back to the idea that there was once a huge conflict in the solar system. And that indeed may have been the cause of the exploding planet. And there was a war, and the war had basically destroyed the support facility for whatever this set of buildings and facility was on Iapetus. And the people that were there had nowhere to go. Everything had to be brought in. There was no way to grow anything. There's no food you can grow on Iapetus. Everything has to be brought in. Water had to be brought in. Food had to be brought in. Air had to be brought in. Everything had to be brought in. And when the war happened, everything stopped. Now, you can assume that there were some ships there that could take some people off, but the real question is, where would they go? The war was completely destructive in terms of the whole solar system. So the people, there were other people that either had ships but nowhere to go, or they didn't have ships because other people had already taken the ships and some people were left stranded. And those people died there. And they just ran out of food, they ran out of water, ran out of air. So if we go there, which I'm assuming one day we eventually will, and walk through the ruins, You will still see the facility, and Daz Smith clearly describes that some of the power generators are in shutdown mode, so they're still actually generating some power, but they're in shutdown mode. But basically, what we'd find there is a facility in ruins, preserved, a lot of it preserved by the vacuum in space, and you would find, unless it's been cleaned up, you would find the bodies or the dust of the bodies of the people who died there when everything came to an end. But it was not, when I say it ended as a result of war, there was nothing there that was bombarded or destroyed. It was never attacked. It was just abandoned, and then the people that were there couldn't get off.
Are there any indications who these people were?
Yeah, they were just like us. They looked like us, they sounded like us, they talked like us, and they were just like the people on Mars, who also looked like us, sounded like us, talked like us. They were not weird-looking aliens. All the remote viewing data came in describing them as just people, just subjects like us. Also, when you sometimes deal with extraterrestrial life that's sort of more exotic, it's very common for extraterrestrials to be able to tell if you're remote viewing them. When remote viewers go to a target, they actually leave some type of like ghostly image of themselves there. Anyway, a lot of extraterrestrials simply, when you pop up in a ship, they turn right around and look at you. And we have some instances where they actually like start up communication, start up a conversation. And that, in fact, happened with the Phoenix Lights stuff, which you'll really want to hear about in a month. I mean, that actually happened, and it was that was a amazing incident. But the point is, with the Cydonia, Mars project, and the Iapetus project, there was none of that. Humans cannot tell when you're remote viewing them. Now, somebody may say, "Oh no, I can detect." No, situations like that are usually a situation where the person is just deluding themselves. They can't tell. Humans cannot tell when they're being remote viewed. Period. Full stop. End of story. And the people on Mars, in the Cydonia region, and the people on Iapetus were just like that. There was no evidence at all that they knew that we were poking around and looking at them. So, and they looked like us too. Just imagine a Zen hotel retreat for the rich and famous on steroids, with normal people walking around. That's what it was. It was amazing. And I don't know of any instance anywhere in the UFO extraterrestrial literature where something like this was described, where something like this is. It's always some type of alien base with, military or industrial or scientific or whatever orientation. This had absolutely nothing like that. This was a facility built on the most beautiful spot in the solar system, perhaps many solar systems. And
hey, Courtney,
it was amazing.
Do we have an idea when it was in its prime?
Yes, it was a long time ago. Now, the actual dating is difficult, but at this point you can try to connect the dots using other data. So this is speculative because you can't really get the dating explicitly from remote viewing, other than to know it was in the very, very, very distant past. So Thomas Van Flander's work on the exploding planet, if indeed that was a cause of war, that's a good thing to go on. And he suggests that you're dealing with time frames in the millions of years, like 10 million years and so on, that we're not dealing with time frames in the hundreds of millions of years or billions of years. So there's arguments to be made that whatever all this stuff happened, it didn't happen too long ago. I mean, it didn't happen like 100,000 years ago. We're talking millions of years, but not that many millions. And if you look at other work by John Brandenburg, for example, he's a very mainstream physicist who worked at the Scandia Labs. He's just come out with a book in March of this year called Death on Mars, where it's his second book on the subject, but he very clearly describes that at some point in time there was a fission nuclear detonation on the surface of Mars. And that's in fact what ended Mars as a viable planet to live on, because that blew much of the atmosphere away. So the planet that exploded, that created the asteroid belt, we can call that Maldek. That seems to have been the trigger that started all of this stuff from happening. Mars was very close to that planet, because we know that because half of Mars is heavily cratered, and the other half of Mars has no craters on it at all. So the cratered side is also a kilometer, up to 3 kilometers thicker than the uncratered side. So whatever exploded was very near, was very close to Mars. But that didn't kill off everything on Mars, because some years later, say 100,000 years after that, there was a fission nuclear explosion on the surface of Mars. So life found a way. They recovered somehow. But, you know, the exact timing is not something that I can speak of with respect to the remote viewing. That's where you have to go to work like Thomas Van Flandern and John Brandenburg to sort of connect the dots yourself. And so I'll let people do that on their own time. But the basic idea is it doesn't seem to have been too long ago. This is a war this looks like it was a war that affected the whole solar system, and it involved a planet that exploded. And it really suggests that there was a very different history to our solar system than what's taught at the university levels. The university simply says that this was a peaceful place, always primordial solar nebula, some planets formed, and then some life started on Earth with microbial life in oceans, and eventually we evolved, and here we are. And nobody else in the universe exists. That's that's quite a fairy tale. But that's what indeed is taught at the universities worldwide. And anyway, so it happened in the distant past. It is very interesting to hear Dick Algire and Daz Smith talk about the time period. So they say things like, when they do perceive the time, because they're shifting back and forth in time, they're saying, this is a long, long time ago. But we don't have a way to pinpoint the date. But, you know, again, you can get that. You can make a most likely case using other information from other people. Thomas Van Flandern is a very good place to start, because he really produced a tremendous amount of planetary data suggesting the time frame based on the orbits of some comets and things like that.
And can we, from this video, can we get any idea of what kind of society they had?
Yeah,
kind of
you know,
clothes. I mean, you used the example of a Zen resort, but is that actually what they were into, or was it more like a Bilderberg meeting kind of place, or what?
Well, maybe a combination of both, but there was definitely a sort of a spiritual health orientation to the people that were there, that were using it. It wasn't like a meeting for the upper ups to decide the fate of society. Although that may have happened, that was not the original intent of building this place. The original intent was to put a hotel. You know, look at it this way. Look at it this way. What do rich people do with their money? Once you get a certain level of wealth, spending a lot of it on some crazy project that normal people wouldn't think of, because we think of money in terms of, do we have enough to buy XYZ this month, or do we have to wait for a couple months to be able to purchase that? So, but when you get the unbelievably rich, those types of questions don't enter into their framework, and they say, well, what am I to do with this? I'm living this life. What am I supposed to do with all this wealth? And so look at, for example, Marlon Brando, who died a wealthy man. Well, what did he do with his money? And Marlon Brando, you know, the actor, well, he bought an island.
Yeah, an island in Tahiti or something like that.
Yeah, he bought an island. He wanted an island, so he bought an island. Now, I do not think he actually spent time on that island ever. He just wanted an island. So he's bought an island. But that's what they do. When you have that level of wealth, you do funny things. Anyway, somebody in the past was richer than anybody we have on the planet currently. And he decided that he was going to do something that would be a mark that everyone would remember. And in fact, it is, because here we are, perhaps millions and millions of years in the future. We're looking at his accomplishment that he did back then and aghast at the audacity and the sheer vision, the dream of what he originally wanted to do, which is to build something on the most unbelievable spot in the whole solar system. I mean, that really took a level of conceptualization that's amazing. So in reality, he got his wish. He got people elsewhere, even in the distant future, to look back at his facility, and our jaws dropped and said, OMG, that is amazing.
Did the remote viewers actually see him at any point?
Yeah, they saw the people, and they saw they saw the people walking around doing what they were doing. They saw the hotel staff. They saw the enclosures. They saw the food that was supplied to them. They described the buildings exactly as you see them in the pictures. And then they went back, when they were back in time, the facility was of a level of grandeur, of spectacular palatial grandeur that is almost indescribable. But we did describe it. And, it clearly matches what's there today. By the way, like people like Daz Smith also said that, if we went in to the facility now, there's some of the power generation stuff that's still there. Now, I'm assuming the air is all bad. I'm assuming there's no water there anymore or food, because that's why the people died. They, had nowhere to go, and they just ran out of stuff. So it might stink a lot. So you want to, wear a good helmet and keep the air. But when you go in, there's a lot of stuff in there that's still there that we would be able to sort through.
That was another question, actually, was it just sort of sleeping? Could it possibly be revived?
No, those people died. I
meant the facility, not the individual. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, but you see, it wasn't a spy or military facility that you would revive and get valuable tech from. This was like a hotel resort, so you're gonna get machinery there, but it's mostly support machinery. It's for maintaining the place. But I'm assuming some of that technology is pretty advanced, and so if we did get there, yeah, we could probably. Daz Smith said it was all in shutdown mode, so that you could probably turn it on and revive it. You might have a lot to do. There's a lot of it hasn't been revived. It's not a facility where people came in later and patched it up and fixed it up. So it was abandoned and left. And it's been a long, long time since it happened. So we can sort of assume that it would cost a lot, take a lot of effort to sort of bring it back to a working condition. Otherwise, somebody might have done it already. And no one did it. So, yes, since it can be built in the first place, someone could obviously repair it, but it might take a lot of resources, and there may not be a person of similar interest to that very quixotic or original owner of the place to make that thing happen.
I was more thinking, and obviously this would probably be in, the future, not necessarily the distant future, but, in the next 100, 200 years or so. When we got there, things like here in Ireland, for example, when they find ruins or something, sometimes they rebuild part of them so you can see what it looked like. And I was just thinking that if, technology had gotten to the point where we could go out there and actually look at it and walk around and do excavations, would part of it be possibly able to be restarted? And it sounds like the answer is maybe, but it would take a lot of money. Now, I was just curious because, it does sound like some of it's there. It's not like, there are theories that the pyramids were actually possibly machines, but if they were, I don't think we can revive them and turn them back on.
No, this one you could revive and turn back on. Some of the machinery is still there and in power down mode. This one you could turn on, and
Courtney, don't tell the military. Don't tell the military. They're going to want to go.
They know about all of this stuff anyway. In fact, they may actually have already visited it. You never really know. The issue is with the U.S. military is the U.S. military budget is larger than the combined military budgets all added together of every other country on the planet Earth. And the largest chunk of that money is in black areas, meaning there's no accountability. It's just the largest chunk is just a black area that no one says anything about what it actually is. And when the United States shut down their manned spaceflight program, shutting down the shuttle and so on, it became pretty clear that they have other ways to get into space, because you don't throw away a multi-decade-long investment and something like that, and then just walk away and say, hey, that was a lot of fun. So they must have been extremely confident that they could keep on, telling crazy stories to the public, and just, but also still have access to space. Yeah. So I'm assuming that they have access, that they have reverse engineered some of the UFO technologies, that they have some ways to travel there. So they might have actually done it. But revising they are more likely to revive a military spy type facility, an extraterrestrial facility of that nature, than they are to revive a health spa. That's my general thought of it.
Sure, but my point is they're interested in energy technologies or stuff they could use, and if construction techniques or something.
You're correct, but you can also assume that this is not the only facility of its kind in the solar system, and they probably have other facilities that are similarly abandoned that they can go into that have military application stuff inside it as well. So I'm not so sure how much of a front burner issue this particular facility would be. But I don't know. It's a good question. It's certainly of interest to you and I. I mean, we'd love to be able to go in there but what we would get from it if we excavated it. And by the way, Melody, this is absolutely correct. What we do with archaeology is we go in and we try to rebuild the structures. We dig them up and we put the bricks back in place. You try to imagine what it looked like originally. So in a physical level, that's exactly what humans like to do. But the amount of money that it would take to do that for this particular location, and given the lack of a military application to that location, seems unlikely that somebody would go there and reconstruct it. Unless we came across somebody who was unbelievably rich and just like the original builder and had some type of idea. That question is very Jurassic Parkish, in the sense that you have in Jurassic Park an incredibly rich person, who had an interest in something exotic, and he gets himself some islands and recreates the dinosaurs. That's the type of thinking that was involved in the creation of this facility.
Well, what I would say is it's incredibly expensive now, but that's based on transportation costs in space.
Yeah, but that would be different
if there is a cheap transportation system that we don't know about, or that gets developed 50 years from now, that would change things dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can assume that does in fact exist. The real question is, does it become accessible to common people, the Richard Branson type, as compared with, military applications? And when it does happen, and I'm assuming that will happen at some point, will some really rich person find it a dream, a vision that has to be achieved to rebuild someone else's dream? That's the question. Or would that person want to do something entirely new?
But I don't think, sorry, my question though, and I think it wasn't so much like rebuilding it exactly. It was more like, okay, and I'm going to go back to our previous interview. When we were looking at what the remote viewers saw in Sidonia, for example, that subway system, to me, if that's what it actually is, did not look like something that you could push a button and do a few tweaks and it would run again.
No,
But
this
it sounds to
this
me,
facility is more like that. It's like you could probably push a few buttons and get it to run again.
yeah, and I'm just, that to me would just be fascinating, and I think there would be an awful lot of engineers, both civil and military, who would be very interested in something like that. Possibly not interested in putting it back in as a resort, but in terms of what you could learn from it, I mean, you could go to Sidonia and go, okay, yes, 40 million, 20 million years ago, or 7 million years ago, or whatever it was, there may have been people, and that's fascinating, and they had a subway, that's fascinating, but all we have is walls. It may be a few pieces of metal left, but if you can go out to something and you've got working machines that are in sleep mode and turn them on, I mean, that's like, entire science fiction books have been written on that. I mean, that's just
Yeah, but
amazing.
there's also stuff on Mars that is a lot closer that is functional as well. For example, we did a project on an anomalous photograph that was supplied by NASA again of Mars, where there was a spray coming out of a nozzle connected to a pipeline that went into a set of domes. And that's a project that's available for free on our website called Base on Mars. And we had a large collection of remote viewers go in and describe this in unbelievable detail. They got the spray, they got some of the chemical composition of the spray, the idea of the pipeline. It was very clearly drawn. And that is a facility with a lot of high-tech stuff on it. And it was abandoned, very similar to this facility in Iapetus. But it had other applications as well, military, industrial type applications. And that facility has been revived. Now, I don't know who it's been revived by, but there are people that look like us, sound like us, talk like us in that facility now. And that's where the spray came out. They're actually operating the facility. The spray is very clear in the picture. You can see the shadow underneath the spray. It's a waste disposal thing. And they're doing stuff. So, that's a facility that's easier to get to and has been, in fact, turned on. It was shut down, just like the Iapetus thing, but they've started it back up. But there's a lot of very high tech in that facility. And the people who are there know it's a hardship post. They know they may not be able to return to where they came from. They look like us. It makes me think that they might be us. It might be humans that were sent there with some, borrowed UFO technology or something. I'm not sure, but it's very clear that they have some spare parts issues. They can't get all of it running again, but they got most of it running. But they've actually done what you're suggesting would be fun to do in the Iapetus facility. So, the issue is, yes, it could be done with the Iapetus facility. Whether it would be done, if it was me and if I had unlimited wealth, I would do it. I think it would be a great, fun thing to do. But I would do it for the purpose of making a movie about the original planner, because to be able to recreate this on cinematic form of what a story. I mean, the guy originally having this vision of doing something like this and then having it all come to an end because of a war someplace and people abandoned. I mean, that is a movie waiting to happen.
Sounds like something from Star Wars to me, in a way.
I tell you, I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Archetypes and galactic battles and all that. And who knows? That guy who was rich, maybe he's was involved in the war, because that's where the profits are in human civilization.
All of these things are possible, and to be quite honest, that what actually did happen with that facility, with the war in the solar system, the whole thing, that's better than science fiction, and it happened. It's real, and I mean, it's like way better than anything you see coming out of Hollywood. So, yeah, I mean.
Hey, Courtney, I've got a target for you.
What's that?
It has to be different. Remote viewers, of course. Find the other things that rich guy wanted to build.
That's really interesting. Yeah, when you get a window into someone's life like this, their quixotic behavior, the dreams, the visions that they had, and what they did with their life, it really makes you wonder, is that it, or did the person do some other wild stuff?
Well, I mean, the people we know today, you can think about multi-billionaires.
Yeah.
Some of them have kind of, I guess you'd say, a drive or a strong hobby to collect the biggest and best and build the biggest and best houses.
Yes.
Larry Ellison is famous for that, for example. Yeah. And, if you've got $20 billion to throw around, why not?
Yeah.
And he hasn't done it with one. He's done it with, 20 or whatever. And, it could be the same story in this particular case.
It's the type of thinking that the very wealthy do. Once you have so much money that you're no longer concerned at all, even remotely, with survival, with day-to-day bill keeping, then the real question becomes, what are you going to... You're here in this lifetime only once. You may have many lives, but this one is the one. This is the only one you got now. And what are you going to do with it? So are you going to just take it all to your grave and just count it? Or are you going to do something unbelievably interesting with it? And look at Ted Turner, for example. He's still, of course, a very wealthy guy, but in his heyday, when he was extremely wealthy, he had the vision to sort of change the entire world by giving $1 billion to the United Nations. He had the idea that if you gave $1 billion to the United Nations, you could make a fundamental shift in the way the planet's run, because you'd inspire people. You fund it properly and inspire and show people what it could do if it was well funded, and that would sort of change people's attitudes towards it, and the world would become a better place, and so on. So he just took a whole $1 billion and gave it to the United Nations. That's a ton of money. So, people have these visions of what they think would make their mark on the planet, and they do it. And it's different from person to person. And this guy who built the Iapetus facility, that was a unique thing. But that, honestly, Melody, to be quite honest, that is a story that does have to be told. We have told it for the first time on Earth as humans. So the story has begun to be told. That's why the movie itself is so interesting to see.
I wonder, the reason I asked if either of them had drawn a picture of that man in particular.
No, we didn't actually draw a picture of him. Sometimes we end up doing that. Like when we did the 9/11 project, we got some pretty good sketches in color and everything of some of the people involved. But in this case, the focus of the project was on the facility itself. And remember, this is only one. With the 9/11 stuff, I had the remote viewers go back and back and back to the same thing. So they were filling in the whole picture of this one event. With this project, we had just one target, which is that facility. And they went in once and got their information. So they got a ton of information, but they didn't go back enough times to sort of get to the level where they were drawing color pictures of the actual owner. But they did clearly describe him.
There's certainly not, there may not be enough there for a movie, but there's certainly already more than enough there for a good science fiction writer to take off with.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think there is enough for a movie, but yeah, but a good science fiction writer could have a field day with that setting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I thought it was fascinating to see that, and to be honest, it really wasn't what I'd expected. Like you said, I thought we would be talking about some kind of military outpost of some sort or whatever.
That's it. This is the most unusual thing. That's why you really have to see it with your own eyes. And the descriptions, when we stopped doing remote viewing sessions with paper and pen solely, that was a game changer when we moved to video, because it was really difficult to convince people that remote viewing was real when you're just showing them pieces of paper. They just say, that could be anything. Why do we do that? But when you see the video of the remote viewing done live, and you're seeing the clarity of the descriptions, and they're talking to you on camera in a theatrically interesting way, it's
how about Courtney when Dick says, orbiter?
Oh yeah, I mean
right.
They actually say this was taken by a space probe orbiter type thing, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just the level of detail. He said this was a picture taken from from space in an orbiter. the level of detail is astounding. And both of them clearly said this is a meteor crater, and on a moon someplace, and why the blankety blank are we sent here? And so to pick on Dick Algar one more time. It's so funny to see him saying, "I'm looking everywhere. All I'm seeing is I'm in the middle of this meteor crater. He's describing every little thing, and then he looks in the camera and it says, "I'm really trying to figure out why I'd be sent here in the first place. There's just nothing here but land, and more land, and a meteor crater with meteor debris. And the only thing that's unusual is this thing in the corner of the meteor against the wall. And that's artificial. So I guess that's why I'm supposed to be here." So he walks over there and starts describing it. I mean, to see that level of description on camera live, and it's not rehearsed. It's not like he's recounting what he did. You actually see him doing it, where he says, "Yeah, so I guess I'm going to go over there and look at what this thing is." And he describes it. Literally, it's a jaw-dropping experience. And anyway, I hope your listeners do get a chance to watch it. It's available immediately as a video on demand on Vimeo and as a DVD. And so I do hope people get to see it, because it's I've never seen anything like this type of a project before, where you have that type of a facility. It's
and the sketch of the rings of Saturn that you're looking up. Hey,
and it's not just a sketch; it's a color painting. Dick made a color painting of the planet with the rings of Saturn right above him. You get an idea you get an idea of the impressive grandeur of the location, as well as the level of clarity of the remote viewing.
Yeah, again, I recommend people watch this. You get an idea of what remote viewing can actually do. And as you said, video does more justice than paper.
Yeah, it really is. We stopped doing, the only reason we do paper and pen sessions now is just as warm-up exercises, and then we just jump immediately into video, because that's the only way to show people what happened. Because you're describing something, you have to have physically, the person, we use words to describe stuff, and pictures in combination. It's a visual and auditory experience. So you have to have all that there in order to adequately describe what's going on with a particular thing. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask people to, when they come to our website to look at all this stuff, if they could sign up for our free newsletter just by putting the email address in. We're a nonprofit. We don't do any advertising at all. So we have no way to tell people what we're doing unless they sign up for the free newsletter. And we never give the email addresses out to anyone for any purpose, end of story, period. And so it's only a weekly newsletter that has a great comic strip in it as well. So that's good. We also started a video version of a newsletter, what we call the Farsight Scene Video News Blast. And that comes out once a week on YouTube. So people might want to check out our YouTube stuff as well, which is really, we just did a major upgrade of our YouTube channel, fully professionalized. YouTube helped us out, actually. They worked with us one-on-one to get the channel up to professional standards, which was really, we're very deeply grateful to the help that YouTube gave us to help improve our channel.
Okay,
but sign
Courtney, is there anything else you'd like to tell people? It's the farsight.org.
Yeah, it's www.farsight.org, F-A-R-S-I-G-H-T, like seeing far, and .org, because we are a nonprofit. 98% of everything on the website is free. So it's the largest venue of anything dealing with remote viewing anywhere, and there's huge public projects. So I encourage people to spend some time on the website and to check out the latest project, which is the one on Iapetus, but also Cydonia, and to keep yourself braced and ready for what you're going to see with the Phoenix Lights in just a month or so.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. So, Courtney, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
I appreciate so much getting on your radio. It's always an honor to be invited by you guys. And your guys are really great hosts and ask great questions. So thank you.
Okay, till next time. That's it, folks. It's a wrap.